Take two. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Keep the Mic On. I am simply Sherry, and if you are familiar with us and the show, you know that every week we go live with an artist who we respect and enjoy to talk to them about what it is that they do. My week is called From Behind the Microphone, where I take the time to get to know the poet behind the poems or the artist behind the art. I'm going to kick it to the first Black poet laureate of Alexandria, Virginia, Kaniki Jakarta.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. This is a perfect opportunity for you to tell your mama and them that we have an awesome artist on tonight. I call her my homegirl and yours. Her name is Sharise Moore, and I've been waiting since I found out that she's going to be on here. I've been waiting to get her. So while I'm introducing myself, it is time for you to go ahead and send that link and let people know that we are back with Keep the Mic On. My week is called Poets and Platforms, where I interview poets who have platforms for the arts. I do the fourth week of this collective while we are trying to keep the mic on. So we've been doing this a little bit over a year now. And yeah, I'm Kaniki Jakarta and happily serving a 3-year term as the first Black poet laureate of Alexandria, Virginia. And I am happily excited and amazing to kick it to my co-host, your hostess for tonight. Her name, they don't call her the girl genius for nothing, Danielle Reed.
I had to unmute myself. Our fourth member is probably incoming shortly, and that would be Charity Blackwell. And her week is Art Plus Therapy, where she interviews artists who use their art as a form of healing, either for themselves or others. And then we are on my week, which is called Let's Talk About the Book, which is where I get an author on here and I pick their brain about their books, their projects, the process behind the book. And I mean, if you want to do a masterclass in writing, this is it. This is exactly why I picked this as my theme. Because I feel like, everybody we've had on here so far has really, really given us some great insight, and I'm super excited. So what you guys don't know is this has been many months in the making. This interview has been many months in the making. Like ever since I found out that our guest was dropping a book, I'm like, hey, as soon as this is done, like, talk to me. Talk to me. We need to get you on this show. So again, like I said, this has been a few months in the making, and I'm super excited, everybody. I know y'all can't hear me. It's just us in the room, and it's great because we do the live stream. It's fantastic. So I just want like the whole rest of the world that's listening to, kind of virtually applaud for Sharise Moore. I am so excited to have her here. I am going to open up with, she's given me her bio and her info and all of that, but I'm actually going to open with her doing something first, and then we'll get back to the other stuff. Are you cool with that?
Oh my gosh. I have a feeling
with you first. Normally I do the bio first, but I'm going to open with you first instead of that. You can do a poem, you can read a segment from the book, and then we'll get back to it.
Oh my goodness. You know what? I am going to read a short segment, and this is something that I've done to kind of like connect. Well, there are different devices, and I'll be talking about devices in fiction later on in the show. But one of my favorite authors uses some really interesting devices in order to reveal like backstory, and so I decided to kind of do something similar. So this is a newspaper article, and this is from Dr. Marvellus Jinn's Odd Scholars, now available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, on Books A Million, and anywhere books are sold. So pick it up if you haven't already. So this is my little excerpt. All right. Race riot near Lake Pontchartrain leads to lynching. New Orleans, Louisiana, August 9th, 1919. A disturbance at an outdoor market led to a lynching on the banks of Lake Pontchartrain on Saturday afternoon. Eyewitnesses say a group of vendors had been selling their wares peacefully when a scuffle broke out. According to Laura Lafayette of 21 Rue Charles, an irate colored woman refused to return the money of a white man who had bought one of her items and politely requested an exchange. The crowd dissolved into chaos as the colored woman was carried off and hanged. Diane LaFleur of Rue Dauphine, who witnessed the quarrel, furthered that it was for good reason, as the colored woman, since identified as Marvellus Djinn, began chanting spells and hexes and foaming at the mouth with the intention of ridding New Orleans of its good white folks. When authorities arrived to assess the damage, a single braid that looked to have come from the head of a colored had been left behind, but no remains or body had been found. Nothing more is known at this time as the New Orleans Police Department continues its investigation.
Hold on, let me jump myself back in there. I am super excited to have you here. I am pulling up your bio is, first of all, amazing. So let me for the people who don't know you, let's do this. The woman you are listening to currently, who has the lovely voice and the awesome book, right? And we're going to talk more about this book in like 2 seconds. Is a native of New Jersey and a graduate of Rutgers. Her poems and short stories have appeared in several anthologies and journals such as Chosen Realities, Summer 2020, These Bewitching Bonds, and Fantasy Magazine. She's a writer, educator, curriculum designer, host of More Books with B. Sharise on YouTube, poetry editor for Fire Magazine of Black speculative fiction. And this book is a brand new YA magical realism novel called Dr. Marvellus Djinn's Odd Scholars. It is now available, and she is in Baltimore with her husband and the cutest little 4-year-old you ever wanted to see. He is absolutely precious. I'm saying all that to say, if you know her, you know why this is an amazing interview. If you don't, you're going to find out why this is an amazing interview. So first, what is the name of the book? Start with the easiest question.
The name of the book is Dr. Marvellus Djinn's Odd Scholars. Daisy!
Yep, you can see all the comments coming. So what made you, like, some of us know you as a poet and some of us know you outside of the poetry realm. So what made you decide to write in this genre?
Oh, in this genre? Girl, it all started with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
You say Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
Yes, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was my favorite book as a child. One of my favorites, but definitely like my first favorite. And this was a book that I probably have read dozens of times. Do you remember back in the day when we used to go shopping with our grandparents and our moms on Saturdays? Did you ever do that? Did you ever go shopping with them?
My mom, yeah.
Your mom? All right, so like we had this ritual on Saturdays when my grandmother was alive. She's since passed on. But she, we just used to go shopping. It was my mom, my grandmother, and myself. And I didn't want to go as I got older, but when I was younger, loved to go. And I would always take a book with me. And I would literally take, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with me. I would. Hold on one moment, okay?
I got you. I hear the baby. No. See, I told you.
Hi. Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Bye-bye, okay? I'll be done soon. Bye-bye. All right, bye-bye. You gotta go downstairs with Daddy, okay? Okay. Sorry about that.
Don't apologize. I guarantee you 90% of this room, we've been there.
Thank you. So, I really, I used to read this book literally while my grandmother and my mom would be trying on shoes for church. and, and even after they would try the shoes, I was irritated because we would get back too late. And back in the day, girl, parents didn't allow you to have that light on in the car. You can't have that light on the car. You're gonna get pulled over by the police.
You get pulled over.
And I would be upset because I couldn't read my book. But this was a book that I really enjoyed reading, and I read it over and over again. And one of the things that I noticed was there were literally no Black people or non-white people who won golden tickets. And so I was just saying to myself, well, I don't understand this. How is this that we have a chocolate factory, a competition, and no Black people, no Latino people, no Asians, no people of color?
Well, you know what's nuts?
A golden ticket. And
you know what's nuts? Charlie was supposed to be Black.
Yes, I did hear that. I read that his editor, I think you might have shared that with me. In fact,
Charlie was supposed to be Black.
And his editor thought it was a bad idea.
Yep.
So it didn't happen though. But honestly, ever since I was about 8 years old, I said that I wanted to write a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory novel. I said that, and this is really it. And so that was like the first ping of inspiration. But then, of course, we also I was a huge Michael Jackson fan, and he had a video of Paul McCartney called "Say Say Say." Do you remember that video?
I do.
One of my favorite videos. They were at like this medicine show, and they were pretending to sell the strength tonic, and then of course, it was all a ruse, as most medicine shows were. It was more high drama than it was actually finding elixirs that actually work for people or selling them. And then it like devolves into like a vaudeville scene. And honestly, ever since then, I've loved that time period. The 1920s is just amazing to me. 19-teens, 1920s. And then as I got older, I started to research more about that time period. And I just said to myself, oh my gosh, I've got to write about this time period because I love the history so much. It's so rich. And so, like, as far as the genre is concerned, I don't know, speculative writing has just always been my thing. I've loved it. I think I was writing speculative poetry, honestly, before it was even called that, which is kind of like a relatively new term within the last 10 years, I think. So honestly, I've just always been drawn to that, to Octavia Butler, to L.A. Banks, to Nana Leigh Dew, to P.J. Clark. These are just people that have always really influenced my writing. And I'm also a huge Harry Potter fan. Of course, not of J.K. Rowling herself, in her
correct
comments, but just a huge Harry Potter fan. Otherwise, and that's what drew me to the genre. Yeah, I've always read it. I don't think there was a time when I didn't.
I was going to say, I think I kind of stepped into this with Octavia Butler, and I want to say, no, I'm absolutely positive. You are the first fantasy or YA author that we've had on the show. We've had a romance writer. We've had lots of poets, but I do believe you're the first person I've had on here that does anything in this realm. So this is, again, a good reason to pick your brain,
Yay!
So, because I was going to say, our fellow artists are super creative and always manage to delve into other things. We've had people in here who've done nonfiction, definitely done that. So this is an interesting step aside, like people are like, oh, you're a poet, you can't do that. Like, yeah, okay.
Right.
Like I write other things other than poetry. Thanks for sharing,
Absolutely.
Like I said, I was excited for this one because of the topic, because I love things. I love books in this area. I love magical realism. I love fantasy. I love things like that. Surprisingly enough, I'm actually not a Harry Potter. I'm not a Harry Potter person. Surprisingly enough, anything else but. It's like crazy, but that's my own thing. You know what I'm saying? The second part of this is I have to take a second to appreciate the artwork. If you guys have not seen, okay, so you can see the cover of the book on screen, but that's you. And I saw the pictures when you dropped the pictures. She went all out, you guys, on the whole cosplay, put together outfit, doing the photo shoot, getting the photos aged. Like, this was an amazing process to watch. So we're gonna dig back into the writing, but stop for a shout out for the artwork.
Oh yes, absolutely. So first of all, this is the artwork of Marvellus Jackson. Marvellus is from Atlanta. I know he lives in Atlanta. Let me not say that man from Atlanta, because I don't know if he's actually from there, but I know he lives there. And there's a story behind Marvellus, Shane Jackson, and myself. So my son was about a year old. So in 2018, I took it upon myself to go to this amazing Black science fiction convention called Blacktasticon down in Atlanta. And I really wanted to go. First of all, at that time, I was working on Dr. Marvellus Djinn's Odd Scholars, number one. Number two, I had a long-standing relationship with my publisher, Milton J. Davis, who was the co-creator of Blacktasticon, and along with Balagoon. And I just, I wanted to go, and then I'm also a part of a group called DWASF, the Diverse Writers and Artists, of Science Fiction and Fantasy, or no, Speculative Fiction. Girl, there's so many of these acronyms. The Diverse Writers and Artists of Speculative Fiction. And so we had all, said that we were going to go. So we planned the trip, we went down there, and oh my gosh, the artwork for the convention was incredible. And I've seen it before because Milton, maybe a year or two before then, he'd done an anthology, a steampunk anthology. And it's just called Steampunk. And Marvellus had done that particular cover. And his specialty is collages. So he does a bunch of collages. And child, I'm a walking collage, to be quite honest. So I just happened to see him on a panel. Was he on a panel, or he might have just been walking past? I don't remember. But anyway, he literally just walked past me, and I said, "Hey, you're Marvellus, right?" And he said, "Hey, sis, what's up?" And I said, "Look, I would really, really like you to do the cover of my book." And so he said to me, "Oh, okay." He kind of looked at me kind of sideways. We'd never met before. We weren't even Facebook friends at the time. I just knew that he was amazing. And so he said, "Well, tell me about the book." So we kind of sat down and chatted for a few minutes. We're at a con, an in-person con before the pandemic. So we were able to do that. And I just told him, and he was like, "Yo, that concept sounds really dope. I love that." And he was like, "Look me up, no problem. When you need it, let me know." So 2 years, fast forward 2 more years. So this is January 2020. I started to try to shop this book. Like, I really did. I tried to shop it, and I kept getting some no's. And I was discouraged. That's another thing that we can get into, the whole agent processing and trying to find an agent. I eventually did find an agent, but it wasn't until after I'd already found a publisher. So Milton reaches back out to me, and he's like, "Hey, Sharise, you still shopping Dr. Djinn?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I want to publish it." And I was like, "Really?" He was like, "Yeah." He's like, let me publish it. Now, by this time, a little background on my publisher, Milton Davis. Milton is really doing some amazing things. His company is called MV Media, and it's out of Fayetteville, Georgia. And Milton has been doing this now for like 13 years, I believe. And now he's published over 30 titles. So he's no longer considered like a small, tiny indie publisher. he has a bunch of titles, and again, over 3 dozen. So he has a great following, and so I told him, I said, all right, I want to do it. I was like, can Marvellus do the artwork? And funny story, he said, he can do it, but Marvellus is going to take some time. So I said, okay. How long is some time? I said, 6 months, a year? He said, nah, a few months though. So I said, okay. So man, all I'm going to say is Dr. Djinn's Eye Scholars was supposed to be released in February. So it took some time, and I got a little antsy with Mr. Marvellus. But by the time he revealed the cover to me, he revealed it in stages. So I just kept and he revealed it like 3 o'clock in the morning. I would be asleep. Or, I sometimes have insomnia. I'm always up working or doing something. Or I would see a beep beep, and it's from Marvellus, and he would show me, like a flat design, or he would show me like the mermaid in the bottle, or he would show me the airship, and so I honestly got excited, more and more excited as time went on, and I loved it. And it's funny because I had a conversation with my husband, I would say maybe 2 to 3 years ago, and I said to him, I said, I want to do some cosplay. He was like, all right, then just do some cosplay. Then you do that with your other book. And I thought about it, and I was like, actually, I did do it with my other book, but not to this degree. And so I just started to think about it, has any author actually cosplayed their own character? And I couldn't really think of any. That's not to say that none have. You know what I mean?
I haven't seen it either. Not that I can think of offhand.
Exactly. And so I thought to myself, I think I look pretty good. I think I could pull this off, And honestly, I just started to Google and go on Etsy and think about the different things that represented Dr. Marvellus Djinn. And I just began to collect props. And some of them are still here. Like the cane is here, the hat is here. I sold almost all of the pins, but I can show you one of my cousin's pins. I think this is the last one. She's going to re-up soon. These are like the little conjure pins. And shout out to my little cousin, Farah. My little cousin is 11 years old, and she has her own pen making business. She's a kidpreneur, and she has produced these amazing pins.
I'm going to blow you up so people can see it. Hold on.
Yes, they are amazing. And they are called conjure pens.
Nice.
Recyclable and refillable. So, and these are directly, related to the book. And so I just started to think about it. And then I said to myself, so who can do my makeup? Mamie, of course, Mamie Brown.
Yes. Some of us know her, Mamie. She's and so is Stiletto. She's also another. Oh my God. You know what? I am going to, step out on a, so this segment's called Let's Talk About the Book. And I'm trying to expand this to other things like product wise. I may just be like, you know what? We're going to talk about this art of hers, because that too.
Yes. And she's amazing. She's amazing. And honestly, I just contacted her and I said to her, I told her the concept, and she was like, oh my God. That's dope. She's like, oh my God. Okay, so what do you want to do? And she had other ideas, that I hadn't even thought of. And she brought it to me, and I was like, yes, love it. And then I'm like, okay, so who can shoot it? And I was like, oh my gosh, Rebecca. And she's like, yeah, Rebecca. And I was like, yes, Rebecca DePaz, of course. And so I contacted Rebecca.
She's been on this show too. And the advantage of having a network of poets that know the other stuff, know other stuff and know it well.
Exactly. And girl, how about this? When I said to Mamie, I said, okay, so where do you live? So she said, oh, I live right. Girl, why Mamie live around the corner? Around the corner from me.
Y'all are both right up the street from me.
Hilarious.
She was here and she's like 10 minutes from me.
That's hilarious. She literally was around the corner. And so we had this one date, and we scratched the one date because it rained that entire day. And then the next date that we picked, I don't know if you all remember, but it was in November, and it was like the most beautiful November day ever. It was like 72 degrees. It was a day that they said Joe Biden was finally declared president.
It was like right after the election. It was like one day where it was like perfect out.
Exactly. And so we filmed at Druid Hill Park. I remember, I talked to Rebecca about the different locations at the park, and I had to do it, near this sculpture. There's this beautiful tree sculpture, in Druid Hill Park. They have a couple old tree stumps that artists have carved like Druid-ish sculptures out of. And so I knew I wanted to use that particular area. And then there was another area, like there's this large kind of greenhouse that's nearby. And I said, oh my gosh, that looks like the one of the places in the Motherland Amusement Park in the book. So let's do that. And so we had the photo shoot, about an hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours. And the pictures were amazing. I said, oh my gosh. And now my husband's name is Al Asylum, or Jay Farron. And he's a graphic designer. He's phenomenal graphic designer. If you need anything from like aging photos, websites, any of those things, hit me up and I'll give you his information. But
I was about to say, we can drop it in the chats. We can drop it in the chats if you want to throw his info out there, because I'm more like, trust me when I tell you.
Yes, his name's Al Asylum on Twitter. So just hit him up on Al Asylum. He's pretty popular on Twitter. But I showed him the pictures and he's just like, yo, Rebecca did her thing. Mamie did her thing, And then, honestly, things snowballed. They really snowballed, and people became really intrigued. And so I had fun with it. Like, I started to create these little newspaper articles, like faux newspaper articles, where I would pretend, to be Dr. Djinn, and people were interviewing me, and I was, revealing more information about the Motherland Park. And so it just became fun, and honestly, it was probably the best marketing plan that I've ever done, with a book, because we're almost at 300 books sold already. So
including one on my end, because I told you before we started the show, and I'll tell everybody else here. So I ordered one. I ordered one for my daughter, who is 16, and this is right up her alley. She does cosplay. She does all that. She's into anime, cosplay, fantasy, magical, all of it. So I figured this would be right up her alley. And the original plan was I was going to have her come do a live review, but I just explained to everybody here that she didn't get the book in time to finish reading it because I messed up. So I am going to, when she gets done with it, I'm going to tell you what she says.
Please.
And if you know anything about my kid, she's me. She's I clone myself, and that's it. So I'm quite sure this is like I said, right in her wheelhouse. I'm quite sure she's going to be super happy with this. So I'm excited to see what she says.
Yeah, I am too. And I actually use students as beta readers. Like this book is like ideal for, I would say, students, young people ages probably 13 to 16. 16 might be a little bit on the older side, only because there's not any sex in it, and I know that like your upper YA titles are a lot more edgy. So especially things like Keep the Mic on the Come Up. Excuse me, Keep the Mic Girl. That's the name of this show. On the Come Up. I'm trying to think of some other older YA titles. Even The Poet X. Even
Poet X, yeah.
Yeah. What's the big? There's another book. I think American Street is another one. There's a couple of those books that are like older YA, and they're a lot more edgy. So that's the reason why I kind of scaled it down a little bit for that kind of like sweet spot. Not quite middle grade, but also not quite, I'm about to go in college.
We were discussing this. We were actually talking about this when I told the other hosts that I had booked you for the show because they were asking about the age range, because a couple of the other hosts were like, we have kids and we have nieces and nephews, and we want to make sure, like Sherry asked, but she's about to jump in. We asked about this because I was like, I want to make sure we're hitting right in that good age range. Did you order it for them? You're on mute.
My bad. Yeah, actually, I have 2 nieces. They're all 14 as of the recording of this conversation. One of them's about to have a birthday. But I have nieces and nephews that are all 14. So that was my question. And I know that they're voracious readers and get into a lot. So that was always my question. It's like, what was the age range so that I can order the book?
Thank you so much. Thank y'all so much for the support. Like, the support has been incredible. And I don't know, I always believed in this story. You know, one of the things that I thought about as a kid, you know, like, I don't know, I loved, do you remember when we were kids and David Copperfield would every now and again have like a special?
Yeah.
It wasn't like often, but every now and again he would have a special. And again, yeah, and then I'm always thinking to myself, is it, no, not David Copperfield, child, he did. David Blaine.
David Blaine. Well, David Copperfield when we were really young, because David Copperfield did the Statue of Liberty thing when we were young, but also David Blaine too.
Yes, and David Blaine was like when we were teenagers, right? Maybe like, yeah, middle school teenagers. And so every now and again I would see it, and I was just thinking to myself, oh my gosh, where are the Black people that do this? It's got to be some Black people, some magicians, and there's got to be some people of color, non-white people, who are doing these things. I know I can't be the only person that, you know, wants to be a magician. I mean, even when I was small, like I had my mom buy me a magic kit. Like
I think I had one too. I learned a couple of tricks. That's it.
I was really terrible, but it was something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to be a magician. I've always wanted to be able to do things. So you know, yeah. And shout out to Big Homie, and shout out to Brian.
I got a couple other things for you. Two things. Speaking of support, number one, I want you to know that at least 2 of our previous guests, at the end of the show, I always ask, and I'm going to ask on this one too, like once you get done with the show, we always ask people, like, who do you recommend that we bring into the show? At least 2 of our previous guests have thrown you in the mix, but when I already knew I was going to ask you.
Oh, that's great. I'm sorry to hear that.
And at least 1 or 2 have texted me, sidelined me, either to do it or to make sure that they were online tonight. I actually had at least 1 or 2 people text me today to go, okay, we can't watch the show. Has everything been archived? Can we watch it after the fact? So just know that you have a lot of people behind you on this.
That's amazing.
And I thought that was pretty cool. That's literally, I think that's the first or second time I've had that happen. Well, second time I've had that happen where somebody texted me on a night when I had an author going, I need to watch this show. I can't be there. Is there a way to go back and watch this? Because I want to make sure I support my folks, or I really think this is going to be a good night, and I want to watch it afterwards. So you have a lot of people who were anticipating this and really waiting for it. So I'm super excited. And that includes me. Like, I really was like, hey, I'm going to keep coming back to you. We want you on this show.
Thank you. And thank you so much. Because you remember, you would come to me and I'd be like, hey sis, I don't know when it's coming out. We're waiting. I was like, draw.
I told Sherry, Kanicki, and Charity, I was like, listen. I was like, listen, I got a space held up whenever you're ready. Like, right. I don't know when this is going to happen, but whenever it does. And as soon as you said, well, you can start pre-orders. Okay, so I have an opening. Come on.
Thank you so much.
Of course. I'm here for it. So backing up to the questions, I had a grand total. Like, how long did this actually take? I mean, I know you talked about this whole process, like, so we're going to get there, but how long did this actually take from front to back? How long did this book take?
Okay, so this book actually began with a short story. So it wasn't always a novel. Going back to the Michael Jackson medicine show thing, so there's so many different inspirations. My father's side of the family, they are from Florida. They're from Altamont Springs, Florida. And they are Black Seminole, or descendants of the Black Seminole. And so my father, before he passed, he would tell me these interesting stories, and one of the stories was the fact that he grew up with a swamp, like right in his backyard. Like the gators were just there, and my father was older. So this is my father growing up in the 1930s when he was a kid. And so you can imagine what that had to have looked like. And he would also tell me some stories about my grandmother, who was full-blooded Black Seminole. My grandfather, paternal grandfather, he was a descendant of enslaved Africans. But my grandmother would tell him different stories, and then since I wasn't really that close to that side of my family, I only met them a few times before they passed. I had to do my own research, and so I found this cool research about the Seminole and Gator wrestling, and the history of strongmen, which I've also just really been, I don't know, enamored with. I'm just enamored with early entertainment from the early 20th century, late 19th century. It's just cool to me the way people entertain themselves, and honestly, this. Just as it is now,
pre-television, of course, pre-internet,
Yes.
You have to find very creative ways to have a family night. What do? You go outside. Some of this is pre-filmed.
Exactly. So I'm just thinking to myself, okay, so what did they do? And then I'm thinking about those early Black entertainers, and many of the people, just as they do today, some of the first really wealthy Black people were entertainers. They worked on vaudeville. They were early actresses or actors, or. So I just happened to stumble upon this history of this strong man, and so I wrote this short story. And the short story is kind of like it's an iteration of chapter 1 in the book, which is Omen's story, where he's entered into this arm wrestling competition. But the arm wrestling competition is run by Dr. Marvellus Djinn. And she's basically going up and down the East Coast looking for the 4 best and brightest, most talented teams she can find to tour her new colored amusement park. Because this is segregated amusement park, it's 1920. And she's also giving them a full scholarship to Hampton Institute. This was before it was called Hampton College, Hampton University.
Right.
And so that's what it was. At first, it was just Omen's story. Dr. Djinn, I don't even think Dr. Djinn was a woman at the time. I think Dr. Djinn was a male. And there was this competition, and actually, Omen wasn't really involved in the competition. It was his father that was involved in the competition. And so I love this story so much that I wanted to make a short film out of it. So at the time, this is 2015, 2016, I take a screenwriting class with Tanana Reedu. Tanana Reedu is one of my favorite authors. And she's ended up like just being such a great supporter. I love her. She is so supportive, so kind. And my mom asked me what I wanted for my birthday that time, and I said, well, Tanana Reedu was having a screenwriting class. Could you do that for me? My mom was like, sure, of course. So I joined, and how about this? The luck I had. I was the only person who signed up for that particular, semester. So it ended up being one-on-one. So instead of just it being me and 10 or 5 or 10, 15 other people, it was just me. So literally, I had access to Tanana Reedu, I think, once or twice a week for 8 weeks, where we would just be on the phone and we would have phone calls about my writing. Girl, so lucky, so invaluable. And so she read the short story, and we talked about how we can make this into a script, into a short film. And one of her last bits of feedback was, this is not a short story. This is a novel. and I want you to flesh it out. So it started at around maybe 2016 or so. 2017 is when I really started to like flesh it out and say, okay, what does this look like as a novel? What can I add to it? How can I extend it? And then, to be quite honest, this story wasn't really totally finished, I would say, until March. And I say March because, like, I just, I don't know. I had beta readers who really pushed me. They were amazing. I had an editor um, who was also very good. But at the same time, I was always thinking about different ways and different endings. Even when I look at it now, I wish I'd ended it a little bit differently, but that's fine because I'm going to start on a new book anyway. I started brainstorming for book 2, so that's fine. But yeah, so it started, I would say definitely at least the idea starts in 2015, but I don't really start writing the novel. I would probably say until late 2016, early 2017.
I was gonna say, writers never think their books are done,
Never.
and they probably aren't. There's always, I could have fixed it. I could have fixed this. I could have fixed that. Always, always. Don't ever feel
Always.
bad about that because that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I could have done a better job, but I'm okay. We're here. We're done.
Right, exactly. And you just have to let it go. Like,
You really do. You do.
yeah.
It's fine. Listen, if everybody else is happy, I'm happy. As long as I don't have a typo and then I fail some sort of way in my life, like, oh God, I failed.
Yes. Girl, typos, formatting issues, those are the only things that kind of make me cringe. But again, it's out in the world, and I'm just glad that people are reading it, and I've gotten some great feedback, so that's good.
I'm like I said, I am waiting to get the feedback from my end, and then she'll be here next week, and I'm planning on snatching her copy. So I am excited. So not just this book, but I know, of course, because I know you write other things. So let's talk about process a little bit. What does your process look like? And by that I mean, we've had people on here when I talk about process, like we've had like people on here who say I have to write at a coffee shop, or I only write in the afternoon, or it doesn't matter what time I write, whenever inspiration hits me. But I like to ask, like, what does that look like for somebody else? Because the thing is, I want people who listen to understand that this is not a unilateral thing. Like, we don't all do the same thing, and your process is going to look different. You know, you don't have to get. And I've had, Shinur was here, and she's like, I write every day, like every single day. I make myself write something. And then we had, I forgot who it was that came on. Sometimes we had somebody else who was like, yeah, I can't do that. Like, not every single day. Like, that would just drive me nuts. So
I have to write every day, but I didn't adopt that until later.
oh yeah, they're saying it was Talam AC that said I can't write every day.
Yeah, I have to write every day. But there's a reason. I think I came across this quote from Octavia Butler, and it begins like, forget it, inspiration. Inspiration will not serve you. If you are really serious about your craft, you must do it every day. And I want to like kind of give a disclaimer that, like, I'm not the writing snob that I once was. So, like, I'm not going to tell anybody that doesn't write every day that they must not be a serious writer. No, I would never do that, and that's not the way that I approach giving people advice or encouraging people. I write every day because I need to write every day. I write every day because it works for me. And I write every day because I want to get better, and I think that I've gotten better and I've improved because I write every day. Now, what writing every day looks like is going to shock you.
That part.
Tananari Dew gave me the best advice, and I pass this on to anybody who will listen, to my students, to anybody. Write one sentence a day. One sentence a day. And you know why that's golden advice? Because it always spirals into more.
It does.
It always spirals into more. I have never, ever, ever written just one sentence. So,
I
yeah.
have. I
You
have
have?
those. I've only written, yeah, and that's because, see, I'm weird in the sense that I write for a living,
Yeah.
and I write not non-creative, but not like, I don't write fiction or anything like that during my day job. So I write every day, but sometimes I don't write my own stuff every day because I need a brain dump moment. Like I need a turn this off and then come back to my own stuff because I need a clearance moment. Because otherwise, what I write will sound like what I write for work. So I have to take a day or two in between to go, okay, I've cleared that off my palette. Let's get to the actual stuff. So yeah, mine is a weird one. I can't write every day anymore. I used to when this was all that I did was the creative stuff. You start throwing the other stuff in the mix, you kind of have to take a day off to here there.
Right. And that makes perfect sense. Like I also do like a lot of brainstorming too.
Now
So
that I do.
yeah, like sometimes the writing doesn't always have to be that specific project. And I'm also the type of person that, look, man, I literally I will have 4 or 5 projects at once. Even now, I have so much going on. People are like, oh my God, how do you keep it straight? Like, I have my other manuscript, and that's called Fangs, Feathers, and Folklore, Africa's Amazing Beasts. And that is a compendium of African mythological creatures. And that is actually now, it's not even on sub anymore. It's about to go to auction. So that's really, really cool. That'll be one of my very first, hopefully my very first major publishing deal. So that's coming down the pipe.
I'm going to ask about that.
Yes, and then it's textbook. My textbook is it's about 75% complete. So, and that's an Afrofuturist textbook for middle school students.
I was just about to ask you that part, like what the textbook was about.
Yep, that's coming soon. And then I also have a novel in verse. That's also currently on sub. That particular novel in verse is actually about Dr. Marvellus Djinn's granddaughter. And she lives in present day Baltimore.
Oh, that's going to be wild.
Yep, so and that's a novel in verse. So I have so many things going on until like I'm never just writing one thing. You know, I'm doing research, especially with these creatures. Like, child, they want me to include 62 creatures.
Yeah, I was going to say, I imagine these take a tremendous amount of research and time, and that's also why I ask about like how long it takes to pull something together, because everybody's like, you can just pull this out of your head and great, you can write a novel in 3 months or 6 months or a year. And I'm like, no. If you take 3 years, that's great. If you take 10 years, that's great. Do whatever works for you. But if specifically with novels, those require a great deal of research.
They really do. And I used all of my research from Fangs, Feathers, and Folklore for Dr. Djinn's Scholars. So I kind of like wrote those hand in hand. And I was really writing all 3 of them at the same time, you know. So the mythological creatures that you see in the amusement park in the motherland are also featured in the compendium. You know, I try to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
It just made sense. You know what I mean? To take these creatures and also put them in a compendium with some amazing art and something that we really haven't. I won't say we've never seen it before, because I don't claim to be like this person that's, you know, I'm just the trailblazer, because I'm not, but something that's a little bit more fresh that we don't see as often.
Absolutely.
Right.
I'll let you know another secret too. And I've said this, I think I've said this on the show before. So I had a chance, and this is cool. to have a conversation by sheer happenstance with Octavia Butler years ago. My mom sent me to some as a birthday gift. She sent me to some book reading, and at the end of the night, I got stuck outside for 15 minutes with Walter Mosley and Octavia Butler.
Wow.
So I got a chance to have this. Like, this is before I knew what to ask or what kind of question. Like I didn't want to invade space. I was like in my 20s. I didn't want to invade space, but here's this perfect opportunity to pick their brains. And I really, really in my head think, I wish we had more of that. I'm glad we have more of that. I'm glad we have more people stepping into it like this. This is that great, we need this moment.
Right. And you know what's funny about that, Danielle? I also met Octavia maybe 3 months before she passed. She signed my copy of Fledgling.
Yes.
Fledgling. It's over here somewhere. It better be. Where is my copy of Fledgling? Oh, here it is. Okay.
I was about to say, I trust you. It's up there.
Right. Yep. So she signed my copy of Fledgling.
Nice.
Yep. And this was just maybe a few months before she passed. She actually did a reading at Busboys.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about the Black speculative fiction community, and not really just the entire space, is we all really have a great deal of access to one another. So just like, I've had conversation with Tanana Reed, I've also had conversation with Sharise Moore Thomas, I've had conversations with P.J.L.A. Clark, Kwame Mbalia. So it's really been incredible. It really has.
Oh, is it the pumpkin? Look at the pumpkin. I love it. And he comes in with the train for the win. Ah, train for the win. High five, flying
High
train
five.
for the win.
No high five?
High five and flying train for the win.
Yes. High five. Okay, high five.
All right.
High five. So,
That's okay.
Of course. Anyway. So
listen. This is the most informal, fun interview that you'll ever do. I promise you. I know I'm digging into the whole thing, but.
Oh yeah, and I wrote this while I was pregnant with him. I wrote this right after he was born. I was writing this, so he's really like been, a part of the birthing process. It's funny.
That's absolutely amazing.
But yeah, just having this, being able to talk to so many of the people I admire it's just really incredible. Like I don't know. I can't explain it. It's just really been cool, and I love that about the community.
At the end, you know what? I expect that like 6 months from now, I'll give it 6 months. It might even be sooner than that. Maybe. I don't know. I give it 6 months. And what's going to happen is we're going to be talking on this show about, so we have, like an award-winning author now. And, we've interviewed 5 poet laureates. And because that's what's happening on this show. Like, literally, that's what's happening on this show. We've had the 1, 2, 3 or 4 poet laureates on this show. Some of who've gotten extra kudos on top of, since they've been on the show. 1 Grammy nominee, and I'm calling it that we're going to get an award-winning, New York Times best-selling author up in this camp in a minute.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm calling it, man. You heard it from me first, y'all. Don't say I didn't say it.
I'm claiming it.
I listen,
right.
Everybody else like we here with you. But so where are we on time? Let me see where we are, because then got you. I am going to ask, what is, I'll skip that. I'll come back to it in a minute. What I'll ask you is, for the people who are looking to sit down and maybe try to write something a little longer than they have been. I'm not going to necessarily say write a novel, but let's say, even if it's a chapbook, you want to write a longer project, right? What are, or do you have any like tips or tricks for sitting down to write longer pieces? Or maybe not longer pieces, but just like tips and tricks. Like sometimes I'd be like, you were saying write a sentence every day. Even if you never get past the first one, just write a sentence every day. Like stuff like that. Like I like just to have some advice on deck.
Read widely, and that's something that's really some unsung advice. Great writers read a lot, and they don't only read in their own genre and the genre they're writing in. They read across the genres. So, for example, I also just paired with a celebrity to do something, do a picture book. So, like, I've also just written a picture book. I just finished the picture book class. And I told you about the nonfiction folklore, the novel in verse, and the novel. And I've also written a Dr. Djinn one-act play. It's like a dinner theater play. So I would suggest you read widely and understand that in your process of writing, whether you're a planner or a pantser, planners are people that outline, do, character interviews, brainstorming, circle maps, mind maps. And then pantsers are people that they just sit down and write. I used to be a planner. Like I had to know everything I could possibly know about my characters before I started writing. That's how I used to write. Now as I've gotten older, I'm more of a pantser. But I also might be a pantser because I'm still writing in this world. And I know this world now in and out, so I don't need to do as much planning. But whether you're a planner or a pantser, just understand that you brainstorming a character or writing a character sketch, that counts as writing. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I feel like people don't count everything as writing. You know what I mean? Like, even when you're jotting down notes from research, that counts as writing for your project. It does.
Girl, I have notebooks full of research notes.
Yes, exactly. I have notebooks just for research, just for ideas. So I would have to say that, like, it's just a commitment. It's a commitment to finishing, and you just have to stand on it. And I have friends who would literally harass me about this book until it was done. Shout out to Rasan. All right.
You just led me to two really interesting thoughts and questions. This is first of all, yes, research is definitely writing. Research is definitely writing. And I count it because I do a lot of, like I said, research for my day job writing, but also research for my regular stuff. And that counts for poems too. So for people who are who are poets, I research my poems because I like to be as accurate as possible. Even if I take creative liberties, I'm still going to be as accurate as possible about actual facts. So I want to kind of emphasize that. But the question is about the reading part, because we've had this come up before, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one. So we have had people on here who say they read a whole bunch and they read while they're writing, right? And then we've had the exact opposite, where we have people who have sat here and said, I cannot read other people's stuff specifically when I'm writing. because I don't want my stuff to sound like what I'm reading. And that's not even specific to poems. Like, we've had people who've written longer length stuff say, I cannot read other stuff, or I can't listen to music with lyrics because I feel like it translates its way somehow into my writing. How do we feel about this? I mean, I understand reading, like, as a general, yeah, you should read and absorb the things and do what you do. I'm an advocate for that. But we've even had people who feel like, I don't really read all that much. I kind of do stuff from life experience. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts here.
I read all the time, whether I'm reading or not. You know, whenever I get stuck, I go back and I read Taimba Jess, Olio, or Lido. Taimba Jess is probably my all-time favorite writer, period. Just
wait, who?
Taimba Jess.
Oh, okay.
I love Taimba so much, and the fact that he's our contemporary, and he started off slamming just like us, and now he's a Pulitzer Prize winner. Yep. You know, it's amazing. He's incredible. He's also somebody that is very receptive and really, like, available. If you just want to talk to him on Facebook, it's just amazing. You know, so I don't know. Like, first of all, I think when you realize that none of us are as original as we think, then I think we kind of, I don't want to sound cruel in this assessment, but I think that's when we get over ourselves. All right? It's really important to understand that we all believe we are so unique. And listen, I'm the first person to say you is kind, you is special, you is unique, you is beautiful, all of that, yes. But at the same time, none of these ideas are new. There is nothing new under the sun. Now, the only thing that's new is the way in which we remix these ideas that have already been done. It's the way that maybe we amalgamate our experiences. So once I recognized, you know, that I'm really not all that special, I'm really not all that original, and really not all that unique, then I'm fine with reading somebody else's work while I'm writing, you know? Because we also need to understand that even our favorite author's work isn't new.
It's not.
Like, I want to say there, in a few of my craft classes, we've learned that, you know, there are only like 3 different types of stories, arguably, you know, and in our minds, there's no way we can really comprehend 3. No, that's not true. That's not true. But really, there aren't that many types of stories. However, when we inject, when we inject our own experiences, when we inject our different inspirations, when we inject culture and history, that's when we get something fresh. But fresh is not necessarily new. You know what I mean? So, like, we get something fresh. So my goal is to create fresh work, not new work, because I just know that there really isn't anything new. But what I can do is try to create something fresh. So I'm always reading, and I read in my genre. And heck, some of the stuff I hope it does seep in.
Right?
To be honest, you know, it's like, I don't know, like I've just gotten over myself in thinking that, you know, I don't want other people's work to sound like, no. If you want to be great, you actually do want to adopt some of the things that the greats have done. You know, like that, I want to embrace it. Now, of course, ain't nobody trying to be a plagiarist. You know, you're not plagiarizing other people's ideas. But, like, I'm trying to think. To not only do is effortless with her transitions. Like, it's just, oh my God, it's amazing. And then P.J. Clark, his descriptions are awesome. His characters leap off the page. I want my characters to do that. So hell yeah, I'm reading him while I'm writing my work because I want my characters to be as big as it is. So I just have a very different approach, you know, or an idea about that. You know, now people do whatever works for them, but I don't know. I just don't agree with that. I want to be great, like the greats, like Ntozake Shange. She's also one of my favorites. I want whatever she does to leap into my writing, please.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's interesting because there's different schools of thought on this. Like, I totally get it on either end.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen with me where I write and sometimes I'll be reading something and I feel it creeping in. Theme only though. I notice that it only works in theme only, but I see it when it happens. And then there are some times when I was like, I really just need an inspiration. Let me pick something else up. You know?
Right.
So speaking of books, aside from your own, let me preface this with this. I have about maybe 3 more questions for you.
Okay.
And then I'm going to open the back end of this up to questions from our audience. So I'm going to tell people now, if you want to, go ahead and start throwing questions in the chat. And we will get to those within the next couple of minutes. But just go ahead and have your questions prepped and ready and all that kind of stuff. And we'll start there. But like I said, got about 3 more questions for you. First one is, since we were talking about books, aside from your own, and since we've been, the question was originally phrased as, since we've been in quarantine, what are you reading, or what's on your bookshelf? But what are you reading? It doesn't even have to be quarantine anymore. We're kind of half off and half on.
Right.
So, what's on your bookshelf? What are you reading? What books are, piquing your interest right now?
Please don't. I just.
Wait. Is that what I think it is?
What?
Is that a samurai? No. Is that a samurai sword?
No, this is just my cane from my boat. No.
No. Nothing surprises me anymore. Somewhere in this house, wait. Somewhere in this house there's a working lightsaber. I don't underestimate anybody's ability to hold stuff in this house. I have a working lightsaber.
That's so funny. I love Star Wars too. In fact, I want to get to the Star Wars theme park down in Orlando at some point within the next few years.
I've got a whole toy shelf full of stuff sitting back. This is a bookshelf, but I promise you there's one section that's just toys. Rubik's Cube, working Yoshis, like I have a working little Yoshi, a working Mystery Machine, a Darth Vader Lego clock. There's a whole bunch of like nerdy toys back there somewhere.
That's funny. What I'm reading is actually not here. I think it's downstairs in my bag. I'm reading Ring Shout by P.J. Clark right now. But I just finished this book maybe a month and a half ago. And oh my gosh, this book is amazing.
Is that My Life is an Ice Cream Sandwich?
Yes, it's a middle grade book, but it's about a little girl who is obsessed with Star Wars, right?
That is an awesome title, first of all.
Yeah, and wait till you, oh my gosh, I recommend this. This book is so amazing. But anyway, the main character actually goes to stay with her father in Harlem in 1984. And she's originally from Alabama. So, of course, you know that there is a huge difference between Alabama and Harlem. All right? I mean, huge difference. So she's basically going through this culture shock a bit. But she's also trying to deal with the differences between herself and her friends, and she's learning about hip hop. She's worried about her father, who is one of the first Black people to ever work at NASA in Alabama.
Oh, wow.
And he is also a huge Star Wars fan, and she wants to be an astronaut. So all the other kids think of her as weird, but it's just this amazing marriage of hip hop and Star Wars and coming of age and Black girl realness. And I absolutely love this book. Strong protagonist. This protagonist name's Ebony, and she calls herself Starfleet. Ebony Starfleet, but that wasn't her real name. That was her, the name that she had with her grandfather. But this is what I was reading. And I also am Legendborn, and I'm trying to think of what else I was reading too that I didn't quite get finished. But I was reading a lot of short stories too. I'm the poetry editor at Fire Literary Magazine of Black Speculative Fiction. So I read a lot of poetry, and I also read short stories from Fire as well. So yeah, I was getting into a lot of short stories too.
Okay. I always like some point at some point, and I'm actually in the process of working on it. I am working on a curated list of recommendations from every author that we've had on the show. And some from, and I asked some of our other, like the other weeks when we have guests, I asked some of them as well. So I'm working on a curated list. So if you want, send that over. Like I said, we want to post those up on our site so people can find them. So we can have, like I said, the curated listing is awesome. Is awesome.
If you are
We've had no shortage, and we've had no shortage of really great recommendations.
this book is amazing. I didn't just read this in quarantine. I finished this book a while ago, before the pandemic even began. But this book is incredible. It is an epic masterpiece. Tristan Strong punches a hole in the sky. And
wow.
This book is so good until like now that I'm teaching with a nonprofit called Uptown Stories out of New York City. So I teach virtual world building classes, and I also taught a class on dragons from around the world, and I've also taught a class. I'm currently teaching like an elements of fiction class, and this is all to young people, so teenagers and children ages maybe 11 on up. Yeah, I think my youngest student is 10. But anyway, so working with them, and this book is so good until this is the book that I use for teaching. And I ask my students, I ask their families to buy this book. So that's another way that I give back to a lot of Black authors that I love. I teach their books, in my classes whenever I'm able. Even when I was working with the Baltimore County Public School System, I recommended this book and this book to be adopted in the curriculum. So because I wrote curriculum for the county. So that's another way that I really truly try to give back is, try to get these books in the curriculum because they're too good not to be there.
That's awesome. That is a really great way to give back too. All right.
Okay.
Let's see. I think you kind of answered this, both of these last two questions that I have, but I'm going to throw them out there anyway. One of them was bouncing off of, we were talking about this. I know you mentioned you have a number of projects in the works. The first half of this is now that, because these are different than your current project, is there a different process for you for working on these? And secondly, when do we expect to see the next one? Now, I know you just dropped the first one, but I'm asking.
So the first question is the process different?
Yeah, because these are different projects,
Right. Yes, it is. When I'm writing fiction, I don't know, it's way different than when I'm writing poems. Also, when I was writing the novel in verse, I was able to churn those out in chunks. So sometimes I knew what I had to cover. Writing a novel in verse is such an interesting process. I would suggest poets to just try it, just because it's like threading a needle. It's very different. But some of those poems I would just churn out. Sometimes 10 at a time, 7 at a time, 6 at a time, 5 at a time. Whereas very different for when I'm researching a mythological creature in JSTOR or Google Scholar or something, and then I'm trying to figure out how to put my own spin on a retelling of a folk tale. So those are very, very different, and then it's very different from writing curriculum for a textbook. So they're all very different processes, and I don't know if I can even explain how I approach them. It's just something in my brain, different, I don't know, parts of my brain that turn off or on.
Yeah, I understand that more than you understand. I understand that more than you know. I'm the most ass backwards, and I'm saying this nicely to myself. I'm an ass backwards writer, like I really am. Poetry, I write from the middle concept out, and then everything else, it's very linear. Like, and I can't understand why I can't just do that with certain things. And it requires turning off certain parts of your, your brain going, yeah. So we have to start at the beginning,
Right. I often now, because I was so bad at endings, and I still kind of sort of struggle with the endings of my stories. I am starting to just make sure I have an ending before I even start the book. I gotta have an ending.
I generally will tell people I struggle with endings as well. I go back to whatever it was that I started with in the beginning and pull from there so that it makes sure that it comes back around. Up, 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 up. I see the head. I was about to say, wait, I think you're still muted. There you go.
Okay.
I was about to say, actually, this is good. I'm about to say, I have one question for you, and then I'll open up for the floor. And actually, the one question I saw in here, him being here, is completely on it. So my last question for you, and I think you covered some of this again, but I always like to end with asking, what is your favorite book, your favorite author, or your favorite quote? Or you can pick one of the three. You don't have to do all three. One of the three, all of the three, two of the three, doesn't matter. I just like to end people with just that one little note.
Oh man, I can't do my favorite book or author. Oh my god, that's hard.
You named some though.
I did, but like an absolute favorite, I can give you like a top 10.
I mean, you can definitely name more than one, however that works for you.
Thank you. All right, so what I will say is this. I think that my favorite, this is hard.
I have two, but they're very different for very different reasons.
I would have to say, I guess my favorite author is Ntozake Shange. That's difficult, but I think I just love the fact that she wrote across genres. Like she wrote. She wrote poetry. She has Nappy Edges, it's a poetry collection. She wrote a choreo play, which is, for color girls. She's also written one of my favorite YA novels before it was even called YA, which is Sassafras, Cypress, and Indigo. And she's written Betsy Brown, which is another, I guess you maybe consider that middle grade. So I think it would probably be her, but then I'm so influenced by Tiana Jess. Tiana Jess is just a fantastic poet, and he has really stretched the boundaries of poetry. Can you go ask this, please? I'll be right down, okay? Be right down. Okay, bye-bye.
About to say, oddly, and I still want to get to your favorite. I still want to get to your favorite quote too, and your favorite book. But oddly, one of my favorite writers is Stephen King, but not definitely for the horror stuff, but more so for the on writing book.
On writing, I knew you were going to say on writing.
Yeah, I keep copies of that over here because that's probably one of my favorites. Because if you just need something, there's always something in that book. There's always some nugget of advice, something in there.
And to be honest, my husband actually has my copy downstairs because I'm looking for it and it's not here. So he must have it downstairs.
Yeah, it's over here somewhere.
Yeah,
I have parables. Oh goodness, I have Octavia Butler parables.
the parables over here, all kinds of madness. And then this, you can't see it anymore because I moved it over. I have this random copy of Dr. Seuss walking in my pocket. It's a running joke in my house. It's not even about the book.
Well, that's cool. I mean, I have an assortment of things, but I guess, yeah, Taylor Jess, favorite poet, but I'm also a huge fan of Lucille Clifton as well.
Yes.
And Sonia Sanchez. So and Larry Neal. Like there are just so many for me to name. Like I don't know if I can name them all or just choose one. Yeah.
Well, that's a good list as it is.
Yes.
If you would like, before we jump into these audience questions, you have the option to read something else from the book if you would like. That is up to you. I definitely want people to go get their hands on this. So yeah, I'm all for it. I'm going to pull myself off of here and let you go with it. And again, if anybody has questions, throw them in the Facebook chat, throw them on our YouTube page. Any questions you have, we got you.
Okay, so let me see here. I think I'm going to read just a little bit of chapter 1. And I also read like the prelude. The book opens with the Negro World, and it is a Marcus Garvey's newspaper. All right, so this book is historical, well, alt history, it's magical realism, and it's also steampunk. So it's a bunch of different things. It's an amalgamation of different genres. All right, so I'm going to start there. 4 lucky winners to tour Dr. Marvellus Djinn's Color Theme Park. April 1st, 1920. Dr. Marvellus Djinn, internationally known scholar of sorcery, will award exclusive passes to the Motherland, her theme park of magic and mythological creatures in Hampton, Virginia in June. In addition to the tour, the winners will receive full financial support to attend Hampton Institute. The odd scholarships will be awarded to 4 teens, ages 13 and 19, who prove victorious in competitions in the following categories: strength, ingenuity, chemistry, and magical prowess. All who are interested should meet Dr. Djinn in the following cities: Altamont Springs, Florida, Mighty Biceps Strength Competition, May 2nd, 1920. Charleston, South Carolina, Juvenile Ingenuity Competition, May 5th, 1920. Washington, D.C. Boys Chemistry Competition, May 10th, 1920. And Charleston, South Carolina, Dueling Crystal Balls Magical Prowess Competition, May 5th, 1920. For more information on how to register, see page E5. All right, so now you know a little bit about Dr. Djinn, what she's trying to do. She has this competition, and the winners will get to tour her theme park and receive scholarships to Hampton Institute. And I will begin with just reading a couple pages from chapter 1, Strength is the Family Business. Altamont Springs, Florida, 1920. In a mere 30 minutes, the gathering of a few strapping workers assembling the stage swelled to over 100 onlookers. Everyone within a 20-mile radius of Altamont Springs was in attendance to see if Omen could redeem himself after last year's defeat. His eyes roved over the audience of familiar faces: sisters, brothers, wives, aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, neighbors. They'd all made the trip to see this year's Mighty Bicep competition, the premier event to begin this summer. You beat Cairo once, you can beat him again. Still don't look to me like the boys got it all up here. Omen's father, Ivan Crow, tapped his forehead. Remember, boy, strength is 90% mental. I know, Pop, I know. Beads of sweat gathered at Omen's temples. He snatched a red checkered kerchief from his back pocket and dabbed at his hairline. This was the ritual every year. The same crowd ripe with excitement, the same split of loyalty down the middle, and the same bad blood. Omen's father paced back and forth with his hands stuffed in the pockets of his overalls. Though there had always been 20 contestants, everyone knew the Crows and Armwoods were the only ones who had. The rivalry dated back to 1820 when Omen and Cairo's great-great-grandfathers found themselves at odds over a red-bone gal with green eyes on the plantation on Fort George Island. According to the old folks, the dispute was settled over an arm wrestling match. And ever since Omen's great-great-grandfather's win, the scales had been slightly tipped in the Crow family's favor. One by one, the competitors lined up for the announcement of the draw. Omen leaned against the curtain. A rumble of gator mating calls traveled along the breeze from a patch of swamp across the clearing. His line of vision drifted to the crates and barrels enveloping the stage. Painted black, the red and green letters screamed the contents inside. Biceps galore, love at first kiss, Far East trinkets and charms, salves for spirit sicknesses, back to Africa talismans. An upright piano decorated with black and green symbols stood in the corner. The back wall had been covered with pictures of Marcus Garvey and clippings from the Negro World newspaper. 3 iguanas moseyed around their cages on a table nearest the audience. Each lizard changed its color from red to black to green in unexpected synchronicity. For the first time ever, the Mighty Biceps competition had partnered with a celebrity. He whistled to himself and turned to his competition, Cairo. From his calves as big around his tree trunks to his barrel chest, the boy looked burlier and more clueless than Omen remembered. Altamont's old folks said the Armwood boys had never been babies. They were born big and stayed that way till they died. Yep, he's big all right, but don't let that fool you. Uncle Dwight chimed in as if he'd been reading Omen's mind. It's the skill that matters. He mopped his protruding brow with a bandana. For 365 days straight, Omen had heard the boos and whispers. They'd stuck to him like a wart no one knew how to remove. Sometimes the wheel skips a generation. Might be the mighty crows are finally stepping aside for another family to take the crown. Ever seen that boy's arms? They right scrawny. He ain't got the genes. I'm telling you, he's a wee bit too small to challenge anybody. Ivan done trained the boy soft. I know old Fitzgerald is turning over in his grave. A shrill whistle pulled him back to the present, and a shirtless man in a red vest stood before the crowd. Silver armbands choked his forearms as his silk pants flapped in the breeze. Welcome one and all to the annual Juvenile Mighty Biceps Arm Wrestling Competition. I am Professor Bartholomew Blue, and before I introduce our illustrious judge for today's contest, I'd like to announce the competitors. His accent was difficult to place. West Indian, perhaps? Last year, Omen had met a man from the Bahamian Islands off Florida's coast. He never forgot the ease of his words. Once they left the stranger's lips, they floated on the wind like a magic carpet in the stories his younger sister liked to read. As one of the previous year's finalists, he and Cairo's names were the first to be called. After Cairo posed for the audience, Omen flashed a grin and waved to the cheering crowd. Professor Blue rattled off the names quickly. All were familiar. King Tyrone, Donnie Dumbbell, John the Menace, Duke the Rude, Big Glenn. If a family had a boy who could beat a crow or an armwood, they had something good going. Alan the Outcast, Good Eatin' Gilbert, Smash Mouth Steve, the man shouted among the cheers. Chuck the Whaler, Hilliard the Wrench, and last but certainly not least, Helena Hightower. Omen froze as his gaze swung to a girl with deep dimples and a long onyx braid. Thick set and half his size, it didn't take long to determine she was strong and beautiful. A hush fell over the crowd. Omen glanced at his father. Since when they allow girls to compete? He asked out of the side of his mouth and stuffed his thumbs under the bit of his overalls. They've been hollering about girls being good as boys for a while now. Since Dr. Djinn is here, I reckon this gal, Ivan motioned toward Helena, is trying to get her hands on a scholarship. He shrugged. And who can blame her? It made perfect sense. He wasn't the only one who wanted the chance to see the world beyond Altamont. There was so much more to life than gators and swamps. He promised himself when the opportunity came, he'd snatch it up. We took a vote the other day, his father continued. Omen folded his arms across his chest, eyes glued to Helena. How'd you vote, Pop? Ivan Crow tossed a towel over his shoulder. I voted against it. Imagine if your mama had been demanding she wrestled gators and lift dumbbells. You might have never been born. He cracked his knuckles above his head. Never mind that though. Keep your eyes on the prize. That Dr. Djinn is a legend in her own right. You just wait and see.
Making sure I'm not muted. I love that.
Me too. I had to unmute my dang old self.
Thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you. Thank
No.
you.
Now, Danielle, you want to go ahead and ask the question that was in the chat? All things considered, it was perfect timing on that question.
It really was. I'm actually looking for it so I can post it up.
It was my question too.
I found it. This is what happened. Brian asked, how do you find time to write with young children? And right when this popped up is when he decided to pop in the room.
Look, y'all.
Can I add on children and a husband? Can I add on and husband on mine? I was gonna ask family. So can I add on and husband?
Yep.
Listen, y'all, I don't sleep.
Married and kid. Got it.
I really don't. Like, it especially got bad, I think, when we started working from home last March. I always, because when I was working, you know, at the school, I would write during my planning period. Like I would write during my planning period every day. Not the entire planning period, because I was also doing work. But I would spend a lot of my planning period writing. So now that's gone. So now I'm working from home, and to be honest, I write when Peanut is asleep, and when my husband is asleep. Sometimes he'll wake up and I'm on my phone typing, or I'm in my office and I'm writing. So I really write in the wee hours in the morning of the night, or early in the morning, sometimes 4 or 5 in the morning. And it's been that way for a while.
What are you doing for self-care, especially coming out of the quarantine, working from home with an infant and a husband? Because I know that the only way I've survived it is that I live alone. And like, that's why everybody else has survived it around me. Because nobody has to deal with me.
You know, Sherry, it's funny you should ask that, because honestly, I went to New Jersey this past weekend to see my mom and my family. And I also stopped at my best friend's house. And my best friend Maisha and I, we've been best friends since we were 12 years old. And we had a really long talk about self-care. It's interesting because she's almost done with raising her, well, not, you're never done, but her children are almost out of the house. Her son is 16, he'll be 17, and her daughter she'll be 21. She's already in college. My son is 4. So we had some really candid conversations, and she was talking, my best friend, Maisha, used to be like a track star. She was an incredible track star. She received scholarships and everything. She's one of the best female track stars in the state. And she was talking about how she's kind of lost that outlet. You know, like, where is her out? She's like, I'm in my 40s. I ain't running nowhere. Obviously, but, you know, and I'm not running the race. Mm-hmm. She's like, so what can we do? So we do have a girls' trip planned, you know, but to be quite honest, I have a therapist. So I do have therapy that I go to. I haven't been in a few weeks, but the entire pandemic up until a few weeks ago, I had a therapist. And honestly wasn't doing a lot of self-care. My self-care was order myself a nice meal, and that's really not it. That's not enough. You know what I mean? Like, that's the cutesy self-care. Oh, buy yourself something nice. Get yourself some ice cream. You know, and that's cute and all. And I'm sure that helps, but you know, that doesn't make up for being able to sleep. You know, sometimes it's also in the little things. Like, my husband will take my son with him to the grocery store. You know, and I'll just have a minute, you know what I mean, where I can just lay down, scream, you know, whatever I need to, you know, not writing, not doing anything, honestly, just lying down, looking at the ceiling. You know, even, you know, when you have a child that's that young, Child, you're not even able to go to the bathroom by yourself.
Nope.
He's my shadow. He's everywhere, you know. So, and as much as I love him, he's an amazing child. He's funny. He's intelligent. He's a ham, as you can see. But sometimes, you know, I would like some time to myself that I don't always have. So, Sherry, that's a great question, and my answer is just I'm still searching for it, those outlets, because I know I need them.
Just make sure that you find them because
Yeah, it's one. I'm a huge advocate for mental health. Like I talk about this all the time. I'm a huge advocate for if that is the thing, go do that. Definitely go talk to a therapist.
Oh.
You know.
I'm going to ask Analysis's question, but something that came across my mind and I forgot, and his question reminded me. Would you? One of my favorite authors, she is now deceased. I read a lot of murder. I read a lot of mysteries, and Sue Grafton passed away, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, and I really loved her work. But there are the clauses in her will or in her work is that it will never be adapted for other media, for TV or movies. That's just not what she wanted. So I'm wondering, would you want to see this project adapted into other media?
Yeah, we're working on it now.
Yeah,
I knew that was coming, and that's why I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, and this is something that's like amazing, but I have a former student. Her name is Devin Renee, and I've known Devin since she was 14 years old. When Devin walked in my classroom, I knew she was a star. It's just sometimes as a teacher, you just know, you know, and she's just brilliant. And she graduated a year early. I wrote her recommendation letters. You know, I mentored her for years, and it's so funny that now she's in a position to teach me. You know, and she actually has worked. She worked on the first season of Queen Sugar, and she's worked on a few projects at WB, and she recently was in the writers' room for Delilah, which was a late night law drama on the Oprah Network. And so Devin was one of the first people who I told about this story. So she has been she's been a beta reader since it was a short story. And, you know, years ago, and we've always traded our stories. You know, she gives me feedback on my stuff. I give her feedback on hers. We've just grown like that. She's in her 30s now. It's amazing. So we've kept in touch. Whenever she comes to town, we have dinner, and we've been working on a pitch for this book for many, many years. And it's just so happened that now we're at a point where we've got things wrapped up. And since I have a literary agent now too, we have enough people in our corner to try and sell, you know. And so we're looking around, and hopefully things will work out.
So this is Analysis's question. You touched earlier on your enjoyment of turn of the century, early 20th century stories and movies. We've seen a wave of such on screen in recent years. Downey Jr.'s Sherlock, Jingle Jangle, The Nevers. Do you feel as though the time is right for this time period and that the book might get a kick from this current interest in this time period?
I think so. And I'm glad Analysis mentioned Jingle Jangle. I think Jingle Jangle was really important because we needed to see steampunk with Black people, and I don't think that's something we'd ever seen. And so, and the costuming was incredible. Like I was so impressed with the set design and the costuming of Jingle Jangle. And I'm just glad Jingle Jangle is here because I just kept looking at it and saying, "Oh, that's Dr. Djinn," you know, like literally in so many ways. So I do think so. But there's some other elements as well. Like I'm trying to think. Like there's a time travel element too in Dr. Marvellus Djinn's scholars that can also appeal to individuals who may not be big on the time, in the early 20th century deal, but they want some more realistic fiction. So that element is pretty big in the book, and it will also be definitely a big deal in book 2.
Mm.
Yes.
Are there other questions in the chat? Oh, go ahead.
Analysis also asked about the book. Analysis, the book that I mentioned was Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. And it actually just won a Nebula Award last night, I think. So,
Ooh.
Ring Shout.
Mhm.
And that's also a period piece in which the main characters are demon hunters, but they hunt Ku Klux Klansmen.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. And that's by P. Djeli Clark. And the Ku Kluxes, as they're called, are actual demons. And there's a caveat, a group of black women demon hunters in that book.
Okay, I'm putting that on my list.
Yeah, we're all writing that one down.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any additional questions before we close out?
I would just like to make a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Child, I'm so proud of you.
We all are.
Thank you so much, Nikki.
Just super duper proud in remembering the time when these kids were exhausting you in school when you're trying to teach these kids, and I'm just so happy that I see more of a gleam on your face because you're trying to save all these babies. Okay. So I just want to say that I'm super duper proud of you to be able to accomplish all that. And I hope that you are celebrating yourself as we are celebrating you as well.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I appreciate that.
And for everyone watching, we've put it in the comments a couple of times, but I'm just going to say it up front. Sharise says that you can get the book through Amazon, through Barnes and Nobles, through all the major sellers. Here at Kitmo, we support the independent sellers, so we will drop a link to bookstore.org, which you can get the book and support Red Emma's. So
and you can also get it from the actual publisher site, which I posted a couple of times. The mvmediaatl.com. It's there too. That's where I ordered it from.
Yeah. So it's not that we don't want to support, if we can support other small businesses, we want to do that too.
Yes.
But that will be in the show notes after we close out here tonight.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I am.
Well, did we already? Oh, we already asked that. I said, did we already ask our question?
No, the last one. No, we did not. I did not ask the last question.
Mm-hmm.
I told her I would, and I didn't ask it yet.
All right. Well, now's the time for the last question.
Right. The last question is always now that you've been on the show. Who would you like to see on the show? Who for any of the segments, not just this one? Remember, we have Art Plus Therapy, Poets and Platforms, Behind the Microphone, and Let's Talk About That. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an author.
I think that I would like to see. Have you all had Chenier?
Yes.
It's okay.
She was about to be our first repeat.
Right. She was about to come right back. Yep.
Yeah. Our first repeat is actually scheduled for August right now, unless something else happens.
Right.
There's a poet named John Gavin White that I would like you all to interview. He has a new book out called I, John the Conqueror. It should be back here somewhere. Maybe it's not. It might be in my basement. No, here it is. Oh, I got two people. This is John Gavin White, I, John the Conqueror, a new spelling of my name. He's a poet, and he's also doing a
like I advocate for this.
Thank you. Read a book. Read a book. Yes, you gotta read a book. That's hilarious. Anyway, so he's great, and he's also he is doing what do you call it? He's doing a poetry exhibit at a museum in North Jersey, in Newark. So I would recommend him. And I would
Nice.
also recommend Julia Mallory. I love Julia. She's awesome. Her book is called Survival Skills. She writes poetry. She also writes prose as well. And she talks a lot about the loss of her son. Her son was tragically murdered a few years ago. And the detail, I don't want to get into the details, but she's really taken the pain of that, of surviving, her son's death. And she's really put that into her poems as well as in her prose.
I'd be curious to see about that for either my segment or maybe Charities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say yeah.
Definitely. Thank you for giving us those suggestions. So definitely sound like two strong suggestions. Everyone, please give a virtual round of applause to Sharise Moore. Make sure you get your copy of her book. I will get one myself, probably read it myself because quiet as it's kept, I occasionally do read a little YA just because.
Just because.
It's there. We will be back next week for Art Plus Therapy with Charity Blackwell, and she will be interviewing Richmond poet Megan Rickman Blackwood. So we are really excited about that. Everyone, please have a great week. Have a safe week. Wash your hands, wear your mask, get the book, and we will see you all next time.
Thank y'all so much for having me. I appreciate
Thank
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
You
you.
want to say goodbye, Peanut? Goodbye.
Bye-bye, Peanut.
Bye.
Bye, Peanut.